I'm Emily. We're here at Crossing Arts for the opening of Exploring the Beauty of Nature with Melinda Wolff. Melinda has shared with us her beautiful oil paintings on wood and wooden jewelry made from reclaimed wood. So we're gonna have a little chat about Melinda's artistic journey and inspiration and all of that good stuff. So Melinda, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what brought you to the arts, like maybe like an earliest memory of creating art or like your artistic educational journey.
Yeah,
whatever you'd like to share about that.
Perfect. I'm Melinda Wolff. I'm from White Bear Lake in near the Twin Cities, and my artistic journey started back when I was a little kid. Like I've always done art. I've always drawn and painted and played in the woods. My parents have a creek in their backyard, and that's where my sisters and neighbors, we would play and grow up. Building forts, collecting flowers, picking up frogs and toads and turtles, and I think that's where the love of nature began. I went to the College of St. Benedict for studio art, and my focus was pottery, painting, and jewelry. And so out of college, my first job out of college was a production potter at a place in the Twin Cities where I made Renaissance Festival mugs, just threw mugs all day long. It was a great job, but at the same time, I was starting to get carpal tunnel when I was only 22. And so I was like, I think I need to find something else to work on. So then I went and worked at a wholesale jewelry company for 5 years, which is where I got started with making the jewelry. That was a fabulous job where it was a small business, and so I learned the ins and outs of running a small business. And then from there I transferred into working for the College of the International Institutes of Art, and so I was in the Career Services Department helping students find jobs related to what they were going to school for. So that was a great way to stay connected with the arts, but also kind of see what other jobs are out there for artists. And then I transferred into Target and worked at Target Corporate for 4 years, which was great. And that was where I realized that I want to be an artist. And so 9 years ago, Tuesday is when I became a full-time artist. So we've got some celebration.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And from there I focused on jewelry. I did watercolors. I also do stained glass, and then the oil paintings on wood. So,
So you have experience across so many different artistic mediums. That's incredible. So what brought you to wood?
So my husband is a woodworker. He's standing in the background. He makes wood cutting boards. So he glues a bunch of different strips of wood together, and then he shapes them, cuts out the shape, and then there's all these scrap pieces that are left over. And so he would just toss them in the bonfire. And there was one night I was like, this stuff is so cool, like all of these exotic and domestic woods glued together, like what can we do with this? And he's like, it's just too small for him. And with my background in jewelry, I was like, well, teach me woodworking, and then we'll see what I can do. And so he taught me how to do woodworking, and then from there, that's where I've created like bigger statement pieces, smaller necklaces, some earrings as well, and bracelets. And from there, it's just blossomed and grown into doing this full time. So, and then the wood paintings, I started, so 3 years ago, I was asked to do a gallery show in Austin, Minnesota, and they said, do whatever you want. It doesn't matter what kind of artwork, you get to choose. And so I was like, well, what do I want to do? And I was talking with my husband, and I'm like, I don't want to frame anything, because framing is so hard for art, because it has to be aesthetically pleasing to the art, but also with the interior that it's going to hang. And so I was like, what do I do with this? How do I do it? And then I'm like, what if I take wood and paint on wood? With my background in painting from college, I loved painting in oils, but never do it anymore. And I'm like, what if I try that? So we experimented and cut, sanded, shaped wood, and then this is what happened, So from there, it's just blown up. And so I take the wood and use the wood grain as inspiration for the paintings. And so I'm not creating a lot of the lines, Mother Nature is. So like, especially, yeah, like these ones here, the flower I've created, but then that background, those lines are Mother Nature. Same with that like electric waves there. Those lines are the wood grain. So I feel like my job is to partner with Mother Nature and use my creativity to bring out the beauty of nature. So yeah.
That's what you've done. It's incredible. I'd like to hear you talk a little bit more about, it seems like you and your husband have a great artistic partnership, like you collaborate and inspire each other. So I guess I'd like to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, we just built a workshop. We moved to Waver like about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago. And when we were first trying to find a house, we were trying to find one with a beautiful garage that we could use as a workshop. And we either had like a beautiful garage and a terrible house, or a great house and a terrible garage. So we found a beautiful house with a terrible garage, and then we ended up building another garage. That's our workshop space. And so for us, it's just fun to go out there together and like just be inspired by Mother Nature and like figure out what kinds of woods that we want to use. And each species of wood has so many different unique characteristics. So how do we highlight that in certain ways, especially with his cutting boards and his furniture that he makes? Like, how do we make it just more interesting? How do we bring out that beauty? And so from there, I have about 5 rain barrels full of scrap wood to use for my jewelry. So like I am well supplied, but I always need more, you know. But it's all of the jewelry itself is natural colors, so there's no stains or dyes used on any of the pieces. So it's just different types of woods glued together, which is
incredible.
Yeah, which is so fun to see, like the purple heart, and then yellow heart, and Hadouk and Wenge, and you got African woods, South American woods, and then domestic woods too. So yeah.
Wow. I know a lot about different kinds of wood.
Yeah. we try to test each other out. Like, what wood is this? But it's hard when it's jewelry and there's a little slice, and I'm like, is that ash or is that hickory, or
So you guys are kind of wood nerds.
Well, we try to be. That's right, we can be.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I guess speaking of the material you work with, wood and woodwork is so often associated with it's very gendered. It's associated as this is like an art for men.
Yes.
Do you run into that?
Yeah.
People's assumptions?
I do have a lot of assumptions. A lot of people think that my husband will cut and shape all of the wood pieces for me, but that's not the case. The scraps are just random bits and pieces, and I'll use a bandsaw or a drill press and cut everything. So the nice thing is when I do art shows with my jewelry, I get a lot of men coming in and looking at my jewelry, and that's not typical for other jewelers in different mediums. It's very feminine. But with the woodworking, I feel like there's a little bit more of a connection with the male. The male gender. So we have a lot of good conversations about finishes and about what types of woods there are, and trying to educate people on the variety of woods. Is pretty fun.
Yeah, we talk a lot here about art as a bridge, and art as a tool that's very disarming, that allows conversations to be had that otherwise, people might have their guard up. And I think your work is such a beautiful bridge between the material that's typically seen as masculine and an execution that's very feminine. And we have seen ourselves in the gallery this week having your work, a lot of men who may not typically be comfortable in the space engaging with his work, being really appreciative and starting conversations. So I want to thank you for what you do. Does anybody in the audience have any questions for Melinda?
Do you paint differently for different woods? So does maple paint entirely different than oak? Because that's what I know. I don't know.
You're doing good. You're doing good. So with the paintings, I don't sketch anything out beforehand. So I don't really know what I'm going to paint until it's up on the easel. I do a lot of prep work, so I'll explain my whole process. First, we'll look at the wood. And I have a few suppliers for the wood paintings that I use. So there's one supplier in the Twin Cities, it's called Wood from the Hood. And what their whole mission is to use trees that the cities are cutting down because of disease or just redevelopment, and they'll make that into lumber, and then they sell it as lumber. So their whole mission is, sustainability, reusing, not letting everything go to the wood chipper. And so that's where I get the majority of my wood for the paintings, because I feel like that's just a great mission, and I want to keep that going. So when I go there, I'll look at the wood grain and see what's really interesting, what's catching my eye. And then what I'll do is usually it sits for a little bit as I think about it, and then we'll cut it and shape it to whatever size that we want. And then there's a lot of sanding, as with any woodworker knows, you just keep sanding. And then I do 2 coats of clear gesso, and that clear gesso protects the wood, but also, since it's clear, I can still use the wood grain as the inspiration. And then I'll put it up on the easel and figure out what I want to paint with it. So I let the wood grain and the wood speak to me, and guide me into what I want. Sometimes I'll know like what kind of colors I want to use, and then other times I just kind of sit there and it's like, okay, like I see, like I think I want to paint some flowers with this, or I think I want like waves, like the elm I feel like is such a beautiful wood because it has so much movement in it, that I use that as kind of my inspiration. So sometimes there's flowers, sometimes there's waves, and it all depends on the wood. And
So it depends on the movement and the growth of the wood.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily about the species, but it's about the movement of the wood. Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
So how about that piece on your right? So with the prep time and all the time you have to dedicate to it, what kind of timelines do you look at with that?
Great question. I have no idea.
Okay, never mind.
It's a labor of love. And so a lot of times I never keep track of my hours because it stops me from being in the creative mode. And so for me, like I have to make sure I stay in the flow of painting and the flow of art versus the mathematical part, the like making sure I'm getting this hourly wage kind of thing. So, but great question. I have no idea.
I have another question.
Yeah.
You'd mentioned where wood from the hood.
Yeah.
And kind of sustainability. I know that's very important to you, sustainability and conservation.
Yeah.
So if you could talk a little bit more about how you incorporate those practices into your work,
Yeah.
that would be lovely.
Yeah. I think with everything, there's a lot of waste. And my husband, he's a recycling ambassador. He got his certificate for recycling, and he has such a passion for reusing, recycling, natural energy. And so taking a look at all the waste that is happening, that's kind of where the inspiration. I feel like there's always trees being cut down. How do we use them to its fullest? And that's kind of how the jewelry started too, saving it from the bonfire. How do we, there's still scrap, there's still waste, but how do I make it as minimal as possible? I think is most important because we got to protect the future. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What other question? Yes.
I have a question. So I noticed with the jewelry that a lot of your palette is warm. And then with the paintings, you use a cooler palette. I was curious if the jewelry kind of pushes you to want to make a cooler palette when you paint because you're kind of stuck with that? Or have you considered putting in slices of other materials so you can put a pop of jade in there or something like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I never realized with the warmth and the coolness, I love painting in blues. And so I feel like when I paint in blues, I understand the mixture of paint better than if I paint in reds and yellows and other colors. I don't know, there's something about it. There's probably the chemical reaction of oil paints and how they mix. But so I love the blues and I love the way blues flow, but the warmth of the jewelry, that's a great question. Like, maybe I'm trying to like balance it out. I have no idea.
It makes sense when you put it all together in a show like this.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I was curious about is, you find yourself battling with the wood, creating that warm color that you have underneath, because you're using a clear gesso, and then you're trying to do cool colors on top of that.
Yeah.
And then one more part of that question, I was curious about the jewelry being warmer colors come towards us, right? Do you feel like they look or come across larger than they are because of that? In some sense?
Yeah, I think sometimes the jewelry does seem larger than it really is. A lot of people ask me to make smaller, and I'm like, I'll cut my fingers off.
Yeah.
You know, like, I use safety first, but like, no, I can't. Like, I will like sand my fingertips off if I try to do any. And how do you hold on to something that small when you're not, you know, like? So for me, I can't go smaller. So then like the fun like challenge is, how do I go as big as possible? And so some of these like bigger necklaces, more statement pieces, those are a fun challenge because they slow me down a lot. They make me like think about how the angles of the wood interact together, and then how can I lay them out.
And how am I laying them on?
Yeah, and how am I lay them on? And then also drilling that little hole so all of them lay exactly the same. That's almost the hardest part. Like, and so for me, it's sometimes like, how big can I go with jewelry? Because a lot of people are afraid of big jewelry, but if you get, you know, like these earrings are actually really big, but they're so lightweight because they're thin pieces of wood. And so trying to educate people on how lightweight wood is, and that's why I like having my jewelry touchable even at art shows and stuff. Nothing's under a glass case because I want people to feel it and touch it and realize like how, oh, this isn't gonna weigh me down. This isn't gonna, you know, hold me down. So. And plus, it's wood. It's cool, you know. Like, make it big, right?
Yeah.
Showcase its beauty. Yeah.
I feel, looking at your work, it feels like you must have a really strong understanding of geometry, like the way this pieces together, and you know, and the thought you put in to how it will lay on a human body.
Yeah.
Like, they're big, but they are so flattering.
Oh, thank you.
So how much thought goes into?
Yeah, for me, a lot of it is, especially with the jewelry, is so it's not a science. I actually take I trace my shapes off of pieces of paper, and then cut out the piece of paper, and then trace it on the wood, and then cut it out. So it's very I'm not measuring like per millimeter or anything like that. I don't have time for that. If it's not the right look, I'll just sand it a little bit more, and then it's easy. With the circles, I use a plug cutter, which is it like drills into the wood, and then it creates like a cylinder, and then I'll slice that cylinder, so then I can get multiple pieces out of it in really thin pieces. So, but otherwise, it's just a lot of like sanding and then like, you know, laying it out and seeing if it's all like lined up, and then if not, sand a little more, and then lay it out and sand a little more, and and then it's a clear coat resin that I put on top, and that really like highlights the color and texture of the wood, and it kind of creates a nice barrier between like skin oils and the wood. So
when you're painting in oils, do you thin them a lot and do washes?
Yeah, so I paint everything. I paint really thin, so it is almost like a wash, but I just use it's like a painting medium that I use that's just helps me out. But I barely use any painting medium. I actually ruin a lot of brushes because I'm blending so much. So I have brushes that I apply the paint with, and then I have brushes that I then blend with. And so usually I'm going to the art store like once a month buying more paint brushes because they just go down to nubs, and then I just have to buy more. So yeah, but great question.
Great questions from
Yeah.
folks.
Anyone
So far.
else? Yes.
I have a question that kind of relates to your spouse. What kind of office or what kind of furniture do you make? I'm sorry, I spoke office furniture. That was a dead giveaway.
Always on the spot. He does mostly like small furniture, but he done like
Countertops,
countertops and
kitchen tables.
credenzas, home chests, yeah, and
Kitchen
tables, yeah.
And where did you get the wood that he uses?
Yeah, so he does get it from wood from the hood, and then there's a couple suppliers that he uses to buy the wood. And also, we try to find suppliers that are sustainable, so they're also, especially the exotic woods are really hard to tell if people are just cutting down the rainforest and selling the beautiful wood. So we try to make sure that the suppliers are following the regulations and keeping up with the sustainability, because that is most important for us. There's some woods that we don't buy anymore because we know that they're so limited now because of the forest fires in the rainforest in South America. So we want to buy them because they're really cool wood, but we also don't want to support them not maintaining the wood either. So
By doing this, you're really staying in touch with what's going on with the planet.
yeah, we
So-
try. We
Yeah,
try. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
it's
we
incredible.
only have one planet. We gotta keep it. We gotta
Yeah.
keep it. Yeah. Yeah. What other questions?
I
Yes.
had, one of the things I was noticing about some of the bigger pieces of jewelry that they're pretty symmetrical, and then some of the smaller pieces that are singular, you make them more asymmetrical. But then I was also looking at like the piece behind you there. You get a combination of symmetry and asymmetry happening because of the way that the piece of wood have their natural color that like laid with.
Mm-hmm.
And I was curious if you could talk a little bit about that and how, like, do you feel like you're restricted with symmetry because of the way the body is somewhat symmetrical, or is there a reason why that happens more so, or is that more intuitive? Or?
Yeah, I feel like, well, first it depends on the wood that I can find, or like the wood combo. Since I'm using the reclaimed wood, like sometimes I have a little piece and then I'm trying to like maximize it. So I'm trying to figure out like, okay, how do I cut it where I can use it the most, right? And then other times I'll have a larger piece, and the reason why I have a larger piece is because sometimes the way the wood pieces are glued together, they don't all the glue doesn't glue everything together. So there's always like a little, I don't know, a little imperfection in the gluing. So for me that's like bonus, because then I get more scrap. But I think for me it's all about, well, what kind of wood I can find, and then how to let that wood shine the best. And it does depend on like, a lot of the asymmetrical piece, there's some asymmetrical pieces, and that doesn't it attracts people to it, but sometimes they love symmetry. You know, like symmetry is very pleasing to the eye, and it's very just like settling. Whereas asymmetrical things make people a little nervous sometimes. You know, it all
It
depends on
seems like it would be
personality.
so much more difficult to try to make the piece on the right be so much the same as the one on the left. And then
Yeah.
play off of that, but then it reminded me of a jeweler I heard talking about earrings and how much he hated making earrings because he always wanted them to be the same.
Yeah. Well, and see with my earrings, because so when I'm using the wood, it's thicker pieces, and then I can slice it, and then I can have matching. So it's really one cut, and so then I'm not like recreating two. It's sliced. So then it will be matching, and then sometimes I can slice it another, depending on how thick, then I can slice it and get a pendant to match too. So it's all about like what the wood allows me to do.
Sure, so you can do a lot of pre-planning with those, like the larger necklace pieces if you want. Do you do the same thing with that, be able to cut one piece into two and be able to use it then?
Yeah, so like this one here, these two are from the same cut.
Yeah,
And then
okay.
those two are- yeah, so, and same with these, like these three are actually from the same, probably from the same cut. So, but then sometimes there's an irregularity in the wood, or like there's a weird, I don't know, like a weird striation that doesn't go well. So then that just goes in the wood scrap pile. That goes in the burn pile, or the dog chew pile. He has his own bin that he knows he's allowed to chew from, and then yeah. So he knows the rules. Yeah.
Walter's a good point.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I have just one
one more question. I
Please.
just felt so certain that you were using some stains or something because there's such a variation in color. So can you tell us what the black wood is?
Yes, the black wood is called wenge. It's a wood, this dark. Sometimes it shows like black and brown, and then sometimes when I put the resin on, it'll just turn it almost all black. But as wenge, it's an African wood. And the red is Paduke, and that's also African. And then purple is Purple Heart from South America. So, and then we got oak and maple and Uru. So we're getting good at naming it.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wood nerds.
Anything else? I'd love to answer any one-on-one questions too. Happy to answer anything for you guys.
Well, I think that's it for questions. Thank you, Melinda, for being here.